don't know if we have a song leader tonight or not. If we do, come on up. If we don't, we'll just start class. Okay, you had your opportunity. We'll start class. We're glad you're here. We, on Wednesday night, are studying 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John. Keith is out of town tonight, and he started 3rd John last week and did half of it, and left the other half for me, left me a 10-minute lesson, said good luck. So Tom said that was okay if we got out early, he wouldn't complain. Let's go to God in prayer. Father in heaven, we do thank you for the opportunity to come together with the brethren and to study your word. We pray, Father, that you'll let us understand what you have for us and let us apply it to our lives, ever seeking to do your will. We know that we fall short, Father, and we ask that you forgive us of that. We ask in Jesus' name, amen. So we are in 3rd John, and to really understand this, we're going to have to repeat just a little bit of what Keith covered last week, and we'll be covering it in a little different approach than what he took. If you remember, he took the approach of, I lost the word now, making everybody feel happy coming in and greeting them, and starts with an H. Anybody? Hospitality. Thank you. Senior moment. and that is certainly in there. But I think there's a few more things that we have to look at. But what we want to remember is this is a letter. This letter has been given to or said to have been written by John the Apostle. It says nowhere in here is his name mentioned. It says nowhere in this letter who wrote it except the elder. It says nowhere in here where the people, the person Gaius to whom he wrote it, where he lived, so we don't know where this congregation is. We don't know when it was written. We can kind of surmise on when it was written. Basically, the New Testament was written in 3rd periods. The first period from 0 to 33 AD, the part about Jesus and his time on earth was written. Then from 33 to 60 was a time period when books and letters were written about the expansion of the church. And then from 60 on up to the end of the last book that was written, it was about solidifying Christianity and getting problems worked out and getting things lined up and tied down for eternity, for a time period to come on. So probably this letter was written by John the Apostle as early as the 4th century. This was attributed to him by various different historians. It's never been critically acclaimed to not have been written by him. As we noticed last week, the first verse says, the elder to the beloved. So the elder could mean an elder in a congregation. The elder could mean an older man. And if you go to the Greek, there's no help there. It could still be either one. Now, we know that John was an older man, especially if it was written in the time period to 60 to 90 AD. John would have been an older man, so the elder would have fit. It's been often said that Revelation was written in a figurative language because of the persecution that was going on at the time. And the author, John, of Revelation was led to write it in symbolic language so that hard times wouldn't fall on the church because of the information in Revelation. If that was the case, and I'm not saying it is, I'm just saying that's one hypothesis about Revelation. If that was the case, then John may have been saying, just referring to himself as the elder, either assuming or knowing that these people would know him, or maybe would even have referred to him as the elder in times past when his communication with them. For whatever reason, we're going to go along with his history, saying John the Apostle wrote the letter. Now, this is a letter written to a man. There's information in here that will be pertinent to us today that we'll take a look at. But basically, remember, 3 John is a letter written to a man named Gaius. We saw that last week. And the information in this letter is threefold. One is he starts off by telling Gaius what a good life, he understands that Gaius is a good man, and he's led a good life, and we saw that last week. We see things like in the 3rd verse, for greatly rejoiced when some of the brethren arrived and testified to the truth of your life, as indeed you do follow the truth. Gaius was a good man, and he followed the truth. Down in 5, it says, you render service to the brethren, especially to strangers. I don't know that we zeroed in on this last week, but this strangers is not talking about the heathen, the strangers to Christ. It's talking about strangers to this congregation. This is a congregational situation that John is writing about, even though the letter is written to Gaius. We're going to see the congregational situation that comes along. And he said that Gaius was good about taking strangers in. This would be where the hospitality comes in. These strangers, in my opinion, these strangers were missionaries. Now, they could have been brethren that were strange to that congregation, and they were just passing through. That could be also. But at the time, there were missionaries that were sent out that were not, and we're going to see some things here that I'll show you why I think that. Verse 6, you have testified to your love before the church. You will do well to send them on their journey as befits God's service. As befits God's service. Send them on their journey because they're doing God's work. That's what leads me to believe that these strangers were missionaries. Gaius took the missionaries in, and John told him, you're doing a good job about passing them on or sending them out. For they have set out for his sake and have accepted nothing from the heathen. Nothing from the heathen. This is another reason that I think they were missionaries. They were going out and talking to the heathen. These would be non-Christians. So they were taking the gospel to the non-Christians, and they were not accepting anything from the non-Christians. Many of the people that were going out and supposedly preaching the gospel, spreading God's word, were doing it for gain, and we've seen that in other places in the New Testament. That they'd go out and they would expect these people to pay them for coming in and teaching or talking to them. But these men, these strangers that came in, were going out and they weren't taking anything from the Gentiles, from the heathen, from the non-Christians that they were teaching. So John is lauding Gaius for sending them on and supplying comfort for them. And 8, so we ought to support such men that we may be fellow workers in the truth. I'll come back to that. So this is the first third of the letter. This is the first part of the letter. It's to Gaius. He's telling Gaius he's doing a good job. He's complimenting Gaius on his life. a good life. And then he moves into the second part, beginning with the 9th verse. I have written something to the church, but Diotrephes, who likes to put himself first, does not acknowledge my authority. So if I come, I will bring up what he is doing, prating against us with evil words. And not content with that, he refuses himself to welcome the brethren and also stops those who want to welcome them and puts them out of the church. Here's apparently a congregational situation. Excuse me. Apparently Gaius and Diotrephes are in the same congregation. I would assume that, and this is my assumption, that it's quite possible that they were both elders in this congregation. Gaius apparently had the authority, could have had the authority to welcome or to denounce these missionaries that come in, and he was able to give them support. That sounds to me like he may have been an elder. Now, he may have been a rich man in the congregation that just did that on his own. He may have just been a member of the congregation who was influencing others. But so that there's several possibilities. But Diotrephes, now where Gaius was a good man, he took the missionaries in, he supported them, he sent them back out. There's another man in this congregation called Diotrephes. And John says, I've written something to the church. He's not talking about this letter. He's written something else to the church, to this congregation. Because he said, but Diotrephes, who likes to put himself first, does not acknowledge my authority. So this man Diotrephes was not accepting the letter from John. I'm assuming John's the author here. He was not accepting the authority of John as an apostle to be writing a letter about whatever John wrote the letter about. But whatever it was, Diotrephes refused to accept it. That gives me the impression that Diotrephes, again, was either an elder or he was a very powerful, probably rich, powerful man. Interesting, the name Diotrephes was kind of a rare name in the first century, and it was used mainly by wealthy families. Common folks generally were not called Diotrephes. So it's possible that Diotrephes was a rich man with a lot of power in the congregation. But something he's going to do here in just a minute makes me think that he was probably an elder. But anyway, whichever it is, we have this contention going on in this congregation. We have Gaius accepting missionaries and sending them out. We have Diotrephes who won't even accept a letter from an apostle. He likes to put himself first. Pride. Proverbs 6 says there are 6 things that God hates, and pride is one of them. Diotrephes was an egoist. He was full of pride. He was full of self. He put himself first. And remember what Jesus said, the first will be what? Will be last. And the last will be first. Diotrephes has put himself in a bad situation here. He does not acknowledge my authority. So if I come, he's going to say it later on that I would like to have written you more, but I'd rather come face to face. So he's saying, if I come, I will bring up what he is doing, prating against us with evil words. Not only was Diotrephes not accepting the letter, not accepting the communication from John the Apostle, but he was talking against him openly, apparently openly in the congregation. So not only was he putting down the communication but he was putting down the person as well. And John says, if I come see you, I'll take care of this. I'll take care of Diotrephes. Because he's even talking evil against me, and not content with that. He doesn't accept my communications. He talks bad about me. And not content with that, in addition to, he refuses himself to welcome the brethren. Now, Gaius was accepting the missionaries. Diotrephes was refusing the missionaries. So you can see if a missionary, if a stranger came into the congregation, now this stranger's a Christian, if this stranger came into the congregation, you can see the schism that he would face. He would have one person, maybe an elder, maybe not, saying, welcome, come on in, let us give you some money and put you on your way. He would have this other man, this powerful man, whether he was an elder or not, saying, you're not even wanted here. You're not even going to be able to get in the door. What a situation for a congregation to be in. Not content with that, he refuses himself to welcome the brethren and also stop those who want to welcome them. So not only is he himself not welcoming the missionaries, but anybody else who wants to, he's stopping them from doing it. That says he has a lot of power in that congregation. If he's not an elder, he's certainly a influential, very, very influential member of the congregation. But not only does he stop them, he puts them out of the church. Wow, what does that mean? Well, we know it can't mean that that he's saying they are no longer a member of the Church of Christ. They are no longer a member of the church, of the Lord's church. Because how do we get into the church? Well, God adds us to the church. We're baptized into Christ, and Acts 2 says that God adds us to the church. So if God adds us to the church, if we're going to leave the church, God's going to have to take us out of the church. You can't take me out of the church. I can't take you out of the church. Now, if I do wrong, you can take me out of the congregation. We call it withdrawal of fellowship. But then the rest of it is up to God. But it says here that he puts them out of the church. I'm assuming that means that he disfellowships them. He says, you are no longer welcome here. Because, why, Diotrephes? Because you welcome those missionaries that I didn't welcome. Talk about an egoist. One. Absolutely. Gaius was teaching that same thing. Do good to all. Diotrephes was not. Diotrephes was a problem. And I think the reason John wrote this letter was because of Diotrephes. I get the feeling in this letter that there's contention even between Gaius and Diotrephes. And it's causing a problem in the congregation. And John heard about this. And he's writing, you notice he didn't write the letter to Diotrephes. He didn't write the letter to the church. He wrote the letter to Gaius. And I get the feeling that he wrote the letter to Gaius to support Gaius in this problem. Because I can see that if Diotrephes had the power to say no to missionaries coming in, if he had the power to tell the brethren that welcomed them, you're no longer welcome here, I could see a situation with Gaius as a loving, good Christian saying, what do we do about this? I don't know if I can stand up to him face to face. And I think John's writing this letter saying, Gaius, you're doing right. Don't quit. Don't give up. But he says, If I come, I'll talk to Diotrephes. Now, he says here in the 11th verse, Beloved, do not imitate evil but imitate good. He who does good is of God. He who does evil has not seen God. Demetrius has testimony from everyone and from truth itself. I testify to him too, and you know my testimony is true. Now, he's still writing this to Gaius. And in writing the letter to Gaius, he talked about a man, Diotrephes. Now he's talking about another man, Demetrius. He's not writing the letter to Demetrius. He's still writing the letter to Gaius. But how does this Demetrius fit in? Where does he fit? Do a little assumption. He who does good is of God. He who does evil has not seen God. Demetrius has the testimony from everyone. The testimony, the implication here is, the testimony is that Demetrius is doing good. Well, just like we don't know who Gaius was, we don't know who Diotrephes was, we don't know who Demetrius was. There are several Demetriuses mentioned in the New Testament. No way do they categorically tie to this Demetrius. He may have been one of them, he may have not. The implication to me is that Demetrius is maybe one of the missionaries that came in. He may be a member there, but I get the implication that he may have been a member and he may have been one that Diotrephes was speaking against, or that somebody else had spoken against, and John felt the need to support Demetrius. It may have been, I'm supposing, I'm out in Jude 2 now. It may have been that Demetrius, in his background, had some problems that he overcame, but the members there didn't know he'd overcome them, and they were questioning Demetrius. So John comes in with a 3-point program to support Demetrius. First, though, he says in verse 11, do not imitate evil, but imitate good. He had just given 2 examples of good and evil. Gaius was good, Diotrephes was evil. So he would, now this is not written to the church. This is written to Gaius. So he's telling Gaius, that's beloved, that's Gaius. Sometimes we want to expand that to the church, but that's not the context of this letter. Gaius, do not imitate evil, but imitate good. You've been doing good all along. Don't quit now. Don't let Diotrephes sway you. Don't imitate evil. Don't imitate Diotrephes. Don't get on his bandwagon. He who does good is of God, but he who does evil has not seen God. Wow. I've often wondered what it would be like to hear a retort from Diotrephes. I think we in the church in years past, and probably some right now, have had Diotrephes in the church becoming so swelled up with themselves that they could do no wrong, but they could tell everybody else what they were doing wrong. That's what Diotrephes is doing here. And John is saying, if you follow that path, you don't know God. Has not seen God. You don't know God. If you know God, excuse me, if you know God, you're not going to follow that evil path. You're going to follow the good path. Then he starts to defend Demetrius. Demetrius has testimony from everyone. Now, this could be everyone in the congregation. This could be everyone that Demetrius knew from somewhere else. John knew them. They had talked to John. Demetrius became a topic of conversation between John and some other Christians, and they were all saying, hey, Demetrius is a great guy. He's doing good. He's really supportive. He's spreading the gospel. He's a good man. Whether that's the case or whether it's the people in the congregation saying good things about him, but he says, has testimony from everyone. Now, also, I want you to notice this, everyone. Apparently, there wasn't anybody out there talking against Demetrius, at least in the open, at this point. They may have in the past. But right now, everybody's on Demetrius' side. And then he says, down the last part of 12, I testify to him too. And you know my testimony is true. You know I don't lie. I know Demetrius. And I tell you, Demetrius is a good guy. That's the second support for Demetrius. The third support is where he says testimony from everyone and from truth itself. Truth itself would be Demetrius' life. Take a look at Demetrius' life. That's the truth of Demetrius. And that truth, that essence of Demetrius, says he's a good guy. Says he's okay. Says everything's all right. And then he said, I had much to write to you, but I would rather not write with pen and ink. I hope to see you soon, and we will talk together face to face. Really don't want to spend the time on it. Really got more to talk about. I really want to see your reactions. Talk to you face to face. Peace be to you. The friends greet you. Greet the friends, everyone. Now, this is how the letter goes together. I'd like for us now to read this letter with all those thoughts in mind. A three-pronged, yes. Absolutely. Okay. Could have been. Could have been. Okay? Now I'd like for us to read through this letter again. Remembering it's a letter to Gaius about 3 different men and about a schism problem within a congregation. Keep that in mind as we read through it. The elder to the beloved Gaius, whom I love in truth. Beloved, I pray that all may go well with you and that you may be in health. I know that it is well with your soul. For I greatly rejoiced when some of the brethren arrived and testified to the truth of your life. And indeed you do follow the truth. No greater joy can I have than this, to hear that my children follow the truth. Beloved, it is a loyal thing you do when you render any service to brethren, especially to the strangers, who have testified to your love before the church. You will do well to send them on their journey as befits God's service. For they have set out for his sake and have accepted nothing from the heathen. So we ought to support such men, and we may be fellow workers in the truth. I have written something to the church, but Diotrephes, who likes to put himself first, does not acknowledge my authority. So if I come, I'll bring up what he is doing, prating against us with evil words. And not content with that, he refuses himself to welcome the brethren, and also stops those who want to welcome them and puts them out of the church. Beloved, do not imitate evil, but imitate good. He who does good is of God. He who does evil has not seen God. Demetrius has testimony from everyone and from the truth itself, and I testify to him too, and you know my testimony is true. I had much to write to you, but I'd rather not write with pen and ink. I hope to see you soon, and we will talk together face to face. Peace be with you. The friends greet you. Greet the friends, every one of them. This is the letter that came to Gaius. Now, there are a couple of things. You're not going to get out this early, so just settle back. There are a couple of things. This letter was a particular situation letter, but there are a couple of things in here that come through for us today. One is, how should we treat strangers? Now, by strangers, I'm not talking about the non-Christians. That's a different situation. Keeping with the context here, strangers, Christians, brethren that come into our congregation. They may come from out of town, they may come from across town, but they're strangers to us. They're not normally here. We have a very good example of Gaius, how we should take them in. And even there's a good example here that we're supposed to pay missionaries. Beginning in the last part of the 6th verse. You will do well to send them on their journey as befits God's service. It's talking about the missionaries. For they have set out for his sake and have accepted nothing from the heathen. So we ought to support such men that we may be fellow workers in the truth. So these missionaries, which would be the same today, should we support missionaries? Well, of course we know that Philippians 4:10 through 20, God commands us to support missionaries. So the answer is yes. But in the context here, we have an example that we take missionaries in, give them provisions, and send them on their way. So we have an example that we should support missionaries. These missionaries that we send out should not be expected to take any money from those they are teaching. I'm not talking about when they establish a church and the contribution is there and that congregation wants to support them. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about when a missionary goes out in a missionary effort and he's teaching a non-Christian, he shouldn't say, now that I've taught Christ to you, you need to pay me. So that's why we support him. False teachers always wanted that payment. That was one of the reasons the Judaizing teachers were so strong. And then it allows us to participate in the missionary service. May be fellow workers in the truth. And there again in Philippians 4, it says that when Paul says, you supported me, that gave me an opportunity to go out and spread the gospel, and my converts are credit to you. They're credit to you because you support me. So when we support a missionary, we are involved, actively involved in that missionary effort in spreading that gospel. So we should support our missionaries because they're doing the work of God, because they are not accepting payment from the people they teach, and because it allows us to be part of that mission effort. That's a takeaway that we get out of this. That's page 1. Now, page 2. These 3 men that are mentioned in this letter, Gaius was living a good life, Diotrephes was living an evil life, and Demetrius was living a good life. Notice that these men were defined by their inner self. They were good or they were evil. All of us have an inner self. We have an essence within us We're made up of two parts. We're made up of the human body. God took some dust, put it together, and formed man. Have you ever really thought about that? How he went from dust to hearts and livers and brains and veins and toenails and wow. But that dust just laid there until he breathed the word of life, breathed the breath of life into it. God started man up. He gave him the breath of life. So now we have a two-part entity. We have a temporal body, a temporary body, a dust body, and we have an essence. I call it an essence. You might call it a spirit, a soul. But who we really are is who we are inside. What you see of me here is an image that you can relate this image to Hubert Smith. You don't see the Hubert Smith in here. You don't really see me. I may let you see some of me. I sure ain't going to let you see all of me. We don't have that, but God sees us all. But we have this two-part makeup, the temporal, and it's interesting, this essence is eternal. We call the body, the dust body, the temporal body, because we're told in Leviticus 17:14, you came from dust you came, and dust you will return, but the spirit will be returned to God who gave it. God gave us the spirit. God gave me my essence. Now, when and how did he do that? Well, he might have done it at conception when I was conceived. That's a possibility. I'm sorry, Leviticus 17:14, that other one, Leviticus 17:14, I gave you the wrong verse a while ago. It says that, just a minute, let me get through this, that life is in the blood. Blood in an embryo gains its own blood. When it first is conceived, it lives off the mother's blood. The embryo gains its own blood at day 8 to 10. So at day 8 to 10, that embryo has its own blood. If life is in the blood, then that embryo's life may begin at 8 to 10. Maybe the spirit begins at day 8 to 10 after conception. That's a possibility. A possibility is that the spirit that our two-part makeup is that we receive the spirit when we're born, our spirit. Now, there's a little problem with that one. That's a possibility. There's a problem with it. Psalms 139, 13 through 16 says that God knew David when he was in the womb. So David's essence, that's David's essence, that's not his physical body. God didn't know his physical, well, he did, but God knew David, the essence, while he was still in the womb. So the Spirit has to come while we're still in the womb. Now, I say all of that just for you to think about. I'm not saying one way or the other when it comes, because what I'm saying is, I don't know. How does God go about giving the Spirit? I don't know. We're just not given that kind of detail from God, so I guess I don't need to know. Juan? Wait a minute, we haven't gotten there yet. Don't jump ahead of me. Yeah, God gave His Spirit, but I'm talking about my spirit, my essence, my inner self. So I'm going to say, whenever I got me, I don't know when I got me, but whenever I got me, I got me. Now, here's the key, and this is what I wanted to get to. Yeah, this is what I wanted to get to. That essence is eternal. You had absolutely nothing to say about receiving an essence, a soul, a spirit, an essence. You had nothing to say about that. You didn't have a choice. When you became a human, that was part of you. You're a twofold part. Nothing you can do about it. That essence that you have is going to live eternally. Nothing you can do about that. Your body is going to die. Now, you could do something about that. You could kill yourself and you'd do away with the body. You wouldn't do away with you. You wouldn't do away with your essence because that's eternal. So now we have this eternal part of us. That means that, brethren, we are now living in eternity. We tend to want to think of eternity starts when we die. That's not right. Eternity for me began when I got my essence, when I got my soul, when I got my spirit, whenever that was. I know I've got it now. When I got it, how I got it, doesn't really matter. What matters is I know I have it now, and you are currently living in eternity. The question comes, what are you doing with your eternity? Because we are told that we're going to be judged based on what we do here on earth. Our essence depends on our actions, what we do. There's nothing you can do about your essence. You've got it. Now, you can mold your essence. You can make your essence this, or make your work this way, or make it work that way, but you can't change your essence. Your essence is there. There's nothing you can do about that. So the question again is, what are you doing with your eternity? Thank you.